Welcome, Jennifer. I'm going to turn this over to you at this time.
All right, hello everyone. Thank you so much for having me. I can't believe we have 233 participants with us today. So thank you so much for joining. I'll be sharing a PowerPoint with you today. I'm a very visual person, so that helps me, follow along, and hopefully that'll be helpful to you as well. So give me a second, please, as I get that on for you. Okay. All right, so welcome to our talk today. So Becoming Body Aware, a guide to understanding the brain-body relationship, improving health and building connection. So hopefully we're all where we're supposed to be, and this is the talk you thought you were attending. Great. We'll go over some housekeeping just about how today's gonna go. We already did some introductions. I'll introduce myself, you can introduce yourself, and we'll go over the structure of our time together today. So the first piece is we are here together until 8 p.m. So we have, quite a bit of time to engage with one another. Slides will be sent out after this presentation. So I won't be going over everything in great detail, but I did add details for you to have a look after our talk in case you wanted to further investigate or have a look at anything that I'm sharing. So camera, this is an opportunity to connect. Please feel free to turn your camera on and wave hello. This is not our first choice of how we'd like to connect, and yet it's what we've got, right? So if you want to nod along, if you want to give me a thumbs up or a wave, that means quite a bit, so thank you. So participation today, I encourage you to participate through the chat. So you'll see the chat function, and I've got the chat function visible to me. So if I ask any questions and you want to pop an answer in, I'll read it out. Just a reminder, though, that I will be reading out your answers. So I've gotten some lovely heartfelt responses, but just to let you know that, I will read it out. So just don't share anything that you wouldn't want the group to know. And someone asked if the session will be recorded. The answer is yes. So this will be recorded. The faculty is planning on editing out any identifying information for participants. So rest assured that none of your information will be shared. Thank you so much to the School of Social Work. In my bio, it says I'm an enthusiastic alumni of the School of Social Work, and that is the case. I've had some amazing years at the faculty. I've met some of my best friends there. I've been involved with the faculty after graduation, so I've added some links at the end of this presentation in case you want to get involved, because there are so many ways to stay involved and connected. So thank you so much for having me again. Who am I? So thank you so much, Andrea, for going over a bio. I'm a social worker. I work out of Toronto, and I provide therapy to clients all over Ontario. I treat trauma, so any difficult life experiences that make it hard to cope. And today I'll be sharing some of my approaches from my most favorite therapies. So information that I hope will be informative and useful to you, and this is my passion. So again, thanks so much for coming. Who are you, right? There's so many of you here. If you want to pop me a note in the chat box, you can let me know, first of all, where are you joining from? We had emails from like all over the world. Somebody emailed from Italy saying that they, were hoping to join, but it would be too late there. So if you want to pop a note as to where you're joining me from, please feel free to do that. Okay. Oh, nice. Calgary, San Diego. All right. Thunder Bay, Montreal. Awesome. Great. Okay. Lots from the greater Toronto area. Yeah. So I'm going to let those roll in. And I just thank you, from joining from all over. Yeah. So lots of alumni from all across different disciplines. We have a physician. Nice. So thank you so much for sharing. Wow, I have so much gratitude today. I even put it in my slides. All right. So the objectives for today, I will, at any opportunity given, normalize the mental health challenges in 2020. And today we're going to take care of you. So we're going to share that no matter who you are, it's been such a difficult year, and this has had impact on our bodies. So it's so important to check in with our bodies and learn about the impact of mental health, isolation, COVID-19, the experiences of the year on our bodies. So I'll be sharing a lot of theory, but at the same time, we'll be engaging in some practices. So we'll have a nice full body scan at the end. If this is new to you, you might be thinking like, what the heck is this? So I urge you to stay open, right? If you've never done a body scan or checked in with your body, this is really an experience where learning will be enhanced through trying out the activities we're talking about. And we'll get started right away. Right, so maybe you, like me, had a busy day with clients. Maybe you are working out of an office and traveling home. And in that case, we might want to, dial down our nervous systems, get to, get to feeling calm and grounded and open to learning. Or maybe you spent the day and you were feeling kind of sluggish, like it's raining in Toronto. So maybe you need to feel a little bit more alert. So this gives us an opportunity to check in with ourselves. So wherever you are and whatever quality of energy you're bringing today, we're going to start with the grounding exercise. So please find yourself in a comfortable seat, either with your feet on the floor or you can have your legs crossed. I find that grounding my feet helps me really land. And then in order to get rid of all the visual stimulation that we're inundated with all day, I'm going to invite you to go ahead and close your eyes. And just take a moment here to take note of how your body is sitting. So right away, what becomes apparent to me is that I'm hunched over. So maybe you'll join me in rooting down through your seat and using that to grow a little bit taller. What a difference. Maybe you roll your shoulders up towards your ears and then around and down your back. And that creates more space for breath right across the front body, in the abdomen. And right away, we'll just start by noticing how you're breathing with no need to change it at all. Just noticing that every, 3 to 5 seconds, a new breath comes all on its own. So right now, let's put everything that we've thought about for the day or anything we're planning to do later, let's put it in a container and simply ground awareness to how our bodies are breathing. And in your mind, as you breathe in, you might say the word in to yourself. And as you breathe out, you might say the word out to yourself. And do that a few times with no rush, with no judgment. If you miss 1 or 2 or 10 breaths, just know that you can always come back. Right when you notice, you'll simply rejoin. So a few rounds just like that. Covering the whole breath with your awareness. And then in order to solidify our time together, to really orientate that we are here with one another, that you are not alone right now. There are hundreds of people who have joined from all over the world. Wouldn't it be an interesting experience to take 3 breaths all together? So when you're ready, I invite you to inhale through your nose and then let something go. 2 more times, just like that. Deep inhale. Let it go. Last time, breathing in. Breathing out. Good. Just notice how you feel. If your body is feeling like it needs a little wiggle or a stretch, felt nice for me to put my hands on my body. So if there's anything calling out to you, please take care. Again, this is time that is just for you. In your own spare time, you've elected to be here. So let this be nourishing for you. The first thing we're going to do together is we're going to normalize mental health challenges, especially in this year. So I have this quote here that when it comes to mental health, it's not business as usual. So I've been doing a lot of corporate and organizational wellness, and it makes the world of difference when we acknowledge that we're actually, really struggling, and that it's not enough just to power through and pretend everything is okay, right? This is the first week of a lockdown in Toronto, right? We were told that for the holidays that we're not encouraged to visit with one another, right? So this is a really difficult time. And I added here some information from CAMH, so that's the Mental Health Research Hospital in Toronto, about the state of mental health in our country. And there's just some statistics here to show that mental health has been worsening since the beginning of COVID. Now, you don't need a report to know that. It's only enough to look in the mirror or across the dining table to identify that we are struggling, right? That the ways that we're coping are on the rise, like using substances. The opioid crisis has increased since the beginning of the pandemic. So lots of suffering. And we can almost liken that to experiences of grief. So grief we usually think of in the context of losing a loved one. But we can also consider that it's normal to have experiences of grief around the loss of, economic security, access to healthcare or fear of contracting COVID, in-person social connections, the loss of ceremonies and traditions, losing a sense of personal freedom, losing future hopes and dreams, not knowing what the future is going to look like, academic stability for those young people, who are just going into college or university for the first time, or at any stage in their life, rather. So it's been a really challenging year. More so is that we're constantly inundated with bad news. So for those of you who are podcast listeners, I've added two of my favorite podcasts here, both from this week. So November 26th and November 25th, right? My favorite Canadian podcast, The Current, talking about food insecurity in Canada. And as well as the New York Times podcast talking about food insecurity in the US, right? So Statistics Canada came out with a report to share that there's a lot of families and individuals who are struggling to have their base needs met. And when we're constantly inundated with this news, it can be impactful for our well-being and our bodies, right? Through vicarious trauma, or if there's someone we know and love that's going through this, maybe you're experiencing this. Okay. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna let go of comparative suffering. So this is a picture of the suffering pie, is what I call it. And we're going to acknowledge that, if you are not experiencing your base needs as being interrupted during COVID, it's also okay to be missing some of those other needs, like, ceremonies and traditions. If you're feeling socially isolated, we don't have to compare whose situation is worse. And actually, we run into some trouble when we say that my grief isn't important because other people have it so much worse. So that is something that I see so commonly in my practice. People coming to therapy saying, I'm irritable, I'm angry, I can't concentrate. And people who haven't actually stopped to acknowledge that, it has been difficult for everybody. And when we don't acknowledge that on a conscious level, our bodies will tell us. Right? So when we suppress our emotions, when we don't take the time to acknowledge how we're doing, our needs get manifested through the body. And I'll also share that it's okay to have joyful experiences in the midst of a difficult time. So maybe even in our short time together, you might notice that I love to laugh, right? And even in doing some pretty significant trauma therapy with clients, we have experiences of joy. And that the flip side of pain and suffering and grief is joy. And it's okay to have both of those exist at the same time. Okay. Moving on to the relationship between mental health and physical health. So I was so happy to see the World Health Organization's statement on their website, and so many documents that talk about the interconnectedness between health and mental health, right? They do not exist in silos. Perhaps the most obvious way that mental health and health are related are through the interaction of chronic illness and mental health. So this is from the CMHA. where they recognize that poor mental health is a risk factor for chronic physical conditions. And that makes sense. When we're not doing well mentally, it becomes really challenging to take care of our bodies, right? We can't nourish ourselves with healthy food. We might feel closed in and like we can't move our bodies or experience exercise. We might not be able to take care of our health by going to the doctor or by going to routine appointments. And on another way is that bidirectional relationship where people with chronic physical conditions are also at risk for developing poor mental health. So of course, if you're in pain and you're suffering, you are much more likely to develop poor mental health. And I'm so happy to have colleagues in my network who are doing some amazing advocacy work in hospitals and in the healthcare system to share that, of course, people who are struggling with chronic health conditions are much more likely to suffer mentally as well. But today we're going to shift our talk to something a little bit more nuanced. And here you'll see my beautiful clip art of a detective with a magnifying glass. So we're going to talk about the ability to connect with your body and recognize your emotional state is crucial to monitoring and maintaining both physical and mental health. So this is a little bit more nuanced, right? The ability for you to check in and see how you are doing, recognizing your emotional state, is really important to your health and well-being. So here I've included, a color map that can highlight our emotional states. So at the bottom, you'll see that we have a hypo-aroused state. So I'm gonna challenge you, if you wanna check in the group chat to share when you think of a hypo-aroused state or a low arousal state, what might some of the emotions that come to mind be, right? And an obvious hint would be if you're feeling blue, right? So what kind of emotions might come up? Yeah, okay, so sad, apathy, right. Tired, exactly, depressed, we might be flat or bored. Yeah, exactly. So, in a blue state, we might be feeling exactly that, like hypo-aroused, like our energy is low. And if you look at my body now, you can see that my body kind of sinks down into its own weight. So the energy literally feels like it's down, like it's low. Great. And then we think of when we move into that green window, what kind of emotions do you think might be associated with green? Yeah, exactly. So we might be relaxed. We're ready to, exactly, grateful. We might be ready to learn and take in information. We're present, we're curious, we're interested and alert. Oh, thank you, everybody. Wonderful. Yeah, we're hopeful. So as I'm saying these things, my body reacts to that. I feel like my spine is sitting up a little straighter. My face brightens. I'm excited to learn. Exactly. And then when we move into a yellow state, that might be when I'm slightly hyper-aroused. So my energy might be percolating a little bit. And I'm wondering, what kind of emotions you might think fall into that category. Stressed, anxious, restless, exactly. Yeah, anxious, worried. One of the interesting emotions that we add in this category as well, or if we're really excited. So I'm a person that gets very excited for things, and sometimes that takes me out of a state of being, calm and present and being able to really take in information, right? So it's about recognizing what state we're in and knowing that we can shift between them, which we'll get into. And then when we think about the red state, what kind of emotions do we think go there? Anger. So we're talking rage. We're talking about flipping our lid, losing control, and being completely out of body. Like exactly, we're furious, we're agitated. Actually, agitated might be a little bit lower in that state of slight arousal or awareness or hyperarousal. Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much for sharing, everyone. Okay, so this might seem rather obvious. And in fact, I've taken these colors from children's programming, right? So this is from the zones of regulation, which will forever be my favorite way of conceptualizing our different states. And while we say that we do this work with children, we very much do this work with adults as well, right? If we didn't learn as children how to recognize our emotional state and shift from one state to the next, that's going to be very difficult as an adult, which leads me to my next slide. We are constantly engaging in practices to shift between affective states. And generally, we want to find ourselves in that green state where we're calm, we're ready to take in information, we're ready to learn, right? We're curious, we're grateful. So if you look at the blue square there, you might notice that if you wake up in the morning and you're feeling kind of sluggish or tired, right? Which is the way that I might wake up in the morning. I can notice that and know that I can enforce the skill of being able to shift myself into a different affective state. Now, how do I do that? I use my body, right? So you might do some stretching, even just lifting the arms, getting into the lateral sides of the body. You might take a shower to awaken, with water. You might drink a lemon water, right? Some of you might drink coffee, right? A big mug of tea, exactly, right? And it's about noticing where you are and noticing what shifts you between different states. So I will say for me, I love a good cup of coffee on the weekend, but I wake up in the morning and I'm already perhaps in the yellow state, right? I'm looking at all I have to do today. And maybe drinking coffee isn't going to move me closer to the green state. It might move me farther into the red state. So I know that I only drink half coffee, for example, during the week to take care of my nervous system and know actually what feels good, what helps me shift between states, okay? When we look at being in the red state, right? A state where we're completely out of control, where we feel hyper aroused, we're furious, we're terrified. There are ways that we can use the body to move ourselves down. We might not move into the green zone, but even noticing and building awareness that we can move ourselves down into the yellow is helpful. Now, there's a skill from dialectical behavioral therapy, which I love, which is literally to dunk your face in a cold bowl of water. And I know what you're thinking, what the heck? And yet we know that that is a way we can use our body to lower our heart rate and to snap us out of that state of terror, right? Or if we're in the yellow state, we can use diaphragmatic breathing to move ourselves into a state of more calm alertness. Right? And it's about learning that there are degrees of distress. It's not like we can always go from a 10 out of 10 distress to a 0. We might actually go from a 10 to a 7. So even increasing awareness about how much do things bug you, or how hyper aroused are you, or how tired or hypo aroused are you, and learning that even if we could shift our state a little bit, that is the practice. There's also examples when we want to be moving from a state of curiosity, engagement, being alert, actually to being hypo-aroused. So you'll see, I added a picture of the cutest dog sleeping. But we want to be able to dampen down our nervous system, to not be alert and engaged, to be tired. And we can do that in many different ways. And there are also times when we actually want to rev up our nervous system. So if there's any runners on the call, right, we want to be slightly in a state of that fight flight in our bodies when we're running. Our hearts are pounding, right? We're really getting our energy up. Or let's say in the case where we are fending off danger, right? So if I have to defend myself, then yeah, I do actually want to be in that extremely hyper aroused state. I want to take the resources out of my rest and digest system into my extremities so I can fight or run. And I just got a message I'm going to read out. Okay, could the red hyperaroused state also be associated with intense sadness and acute trauma of recent loss? Absolutely, right? Wouldn't it be lovely if we could just have this nice, neat little, categorization? But I think you're absolutely right. Anything that completely is totally intense can bring us out of our window of tolerance. And that can be in the red or the blue, right? And you might be familiar with that concept of the window of tolerance of, when we are not calm and alert and engaged, sometimes we're out of that window by being very hyper aroused, or sometimes we're out of that window by being completely hypo aroused. Okay, so let's together reframe all behavior as a way to move towards a desired affective state. So here are just a few ways that we might unconsciously be moving between these states here, be trying to be moving back into that green zone. So the first one is addictions. When we look at the CAMH policy paper around substance use since COVID, we know that addictions are on the rise. And this might be as a way to try and make ourselves feel better, right? Whether consciously or unconsciously. We move towards things that we think will feel good, right? Obsessions. So does anyone subscribe to Psychology Today? Right? You get that magazine. If you're on, if you are a Psychology Today clinician and you're listed on their website, they give you the option to get the magazine in, right? Okay, just me. But it's actually a great magazine. It's very informative. And there was a whole, oh, Dustin does, awesome. There was a whole issue about conspiracy theories and why people subscribe to them, right? And one of the theories was that conspiracy theories are a way that we actually make ourselves feel better. When I really go down this deep, dark hole, I feel like I have this information that no one else has, and that I am able to explain the situation, right? Because COVID-19 is a very, it's a scary situation, right? We don't have control over it. And I'd rather be in the driver's seat of a bad situation, right? That this was, you know, well, I'm not going to get into the conspiracy theories, but if this is a controlled, event, then that feels better than feeling completely like I'm in the passenger seat and don't have any control, right? So I thought that was really interesting. We read things to be able to move ourselves back into a state of calm or feeling good. Outward displays of anger, right? Or engaging in judgment. We're constantly doing things, again, to move us back into ways, into feeling good. Denial of difficulties or toxic positivity. So when we actually look at this, this chart of the affective states, we might say, no, I live in the green only. There's nothing wrong here. Everything's great, right? Everything's fine. But when we ignore that, it's really normal to feel anxious. It's really normal to feel sad. That might run us into some difficulties that we'll chat about a little bit. Workaholism, hello, right? Like, this is my favorite way to not have to deal with things that hurt, right? Okay, I'm really sad that I won't get to see my family for the holidays, but you know what? I've got a string of emails that need my attention, and I'm going to be attending to those now, right? Excessive controlling, right? Like organizing our houses obsessively right now. Narcissism or grandiosity. There's this brilliant clinician, Jim Knipe, who's an EMDR therapist, who has a whole section in his book about how narcissism and grandiosity are ways that we protect ourselves from things that are too vulnerable. So if I think that I'm actually not very important, or I was made to feel, like I didn't matter growing up, I might cover that up with this like intense presentation of, being self-focused. So I thought that was really neat. Yeah, so that is Jim Knipe. And then I'll add in, that resource is actually added in the end of this, end of this presentation, because it's brilliant, right? So much compassion for different presentations, even ones that are hurtful to us. Other ways we shift between those affective states are movement, right? We know that we can use the body to shift our affective state, to feeling more alert, or to feeling, calmer by changing our posture, by changing our breath. We can fuel our bodies with healthy food. We can get sleep. We can engage in social relationships, right? Relationships being the #1 predictor for resiliency, right? Going through a hard time, which is why I'm so happy that everyone is here together tonight, right? Just to reinforce that you are not alone. And then asking for help, right? So understanding that you do have vulnerabilities, you are going to have times when you're in the blue zone or the yellow zone, and it's okay to recognize that and say, hey, I'm feeling crappy. Can you help me out? Or, can you sit with me? Or can you take a phone call? Okay. All right. Okay, so emotions are either pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. We are wired to move towards pleasure and to avoid pain.
There's a message, a question in the chat for you, the
Oh.
name that you gave.
Yeah, so it's Jim Knight. So I'll write it down. Oh, I sent it privately. Let me send it publicly. Jim Knight, EMDR Toolbox. So that's for EMDR clinicians, but there's some gold in there as well, even if you're just interested to learn about trauma and the ways that we protect ourselves from bad feelings, basically. Yeah. Okay, so what happens when we're unable to shift to appropriate affective states? We then become at risk for developing illness. So I'm sure if you're on this call, many or most of you will have encountered the work of Gabor Mate, Dr. Mate, right? I'm so saddened to learn that I only became aware of his work last year as I attended a workshop at U of T. When we can't shift to a place of safety and calm, so when we're chronically hyper aroused, right? When we're angry, when we're tense, when we're fast, when we never slow down, when we're aggressive, this is linked to high blood pressure and heart disease, right? It only makes sense. We're pumping adrenaline and cortisol through our blood, okay? Also, this book outlines that when we're unable to actually recognize what our needs are, like, hey, I'm tired, I can't really make it to this meeting, or, I'm feeling anxious, I think I need a glass of water, or, someone to soothe me or encourage me that, hey, you can do this. When we completely ignore our own needs, we also become at risk of chronic illness. So even people who look like they are, adaptive, right? They're extremely cooperative, they're patient, they're passive. When we lack that assertiveness, and when we're constantly trying to gain the acceptance of others, this is also linked to chronic illness. So I don't posit to be an expert, a medical expert, right? I do urge you to pick up this book or check out Dr. Gabor Mate's presentations on YouTube, right? It's all available for free, which is amazing. And when we recognize that we do actually all experience a range of emotions, sadness, shame, fear, anxiety, jealousy is my favorite one, right? Like that's such a dirty emotion. I don't feel that. And yet we're born with the capacity to feel it. And it's okay to have our emotions be met with the need that they have to, that they are asking to be fulfilled. So if I'm sad, right? I might have a need of soothing and comfort, right? If I'm feeling shameful, right? I don't belong, or I did something so bad that, you wouldn't want to be friends with me. That what I really need is reassurance and belonging, right? So you can have a look at this chart, which is brilliant, which has changed my conceptualization of how to work with emotions, is that every emotion has a name, a physiological sensation in the body, and a need. Right? That they're not just, to feel them gratuitously. It's so that we can actually do something about them. We can have our needs met once we realize what those needs are. Okay. If you're on this call, it is also very likely that you are familiar with this book, The Body Keeps the Score. So I've read this book over the course of like 8 years, over and over, because I will always discover something new from it. And what this book talks about is that when we live in a state of perpetual fear or anxiety, that this was actually adaptive at one point in our lives. If we grew up frightened, or if we grew up feeling like our thoughts and feelings, didn't really matter, we maintain this tendency in adulthood, even if we're safe, or even if our circumstances have changed. And the habits we store in our bodies, and the way that we understand ourselves, right? That I'm worthy, I'm good enough, of course I'm gonna make mistakes. Or the way I see the world as, the world is relatively safe, right? I can do things to keep myself safe. That these tend to be unconscious ways that we look at ourselves in the world. I don't wake up in the morning and say, oh, today's a great day to think that I'm not really good at anything, right? It permeates. It's like an app running in the background on an iPhone. So this book is incredible. Again, I urge you, if you haven't checked it out already, to have a look. Okay, so when our bodies are calm, we can engage in problem solving. We can't access rational parts of the brain to problem solve when there's a perceived threat, right? And again, learning to become mindful of what's happening in the body can increase our awareness of what we need. So yeah, so I'll go over this slide. When our bodies are calm, we can engage in problem solving. And we can't actually even access the rational parts of our brain to problem solve when we perceive a threat. So, you know, I have no qualms with, you know, therapies that look at ways of changing our thinking. I think that cognitive behavioral therapy is amazing, and I use it quite often with my clients. But when we feel like we're in danger or we're threatened in any way, it's hard to rationalize our thoughts, right? What we need to do first is calm the body down. And oftentimes we'll over-perceive a threat. We'll look at those two pictures, and in the left, you'll see that there's a picture of a stick, right? And on the right, you'll see there's a picture of a snake. But if I look quickly, my body is going to react likely in the same way for both pictures, even though the one on the left is only a perceived threat. But my body doesn't know, oh, that's a stick that looks a lot like a snake. I'm going to, you know, flip my lid right now. So Dr. Dan Siegel's hand model of the brain, you know, there's a link at the end of this workshop where I urge you to check it out. And it's a really lovely explanation of the brain and actually why when we are in a panic mode, in fight, flight, freeze, we're not able to think with the cortical region of our brains. So I'm not going to go over this, but I do urge you to check it out because Dr. Siegel has a wonderful explanation. Again, just on YouTube, right? So many clinicians make information available for free and it's a gift. Okay, it's only when we feel safe in our bodies that we can truly connect with others. And again, connection is the single greatest predictor for physical and mental health. Okay, so we're gonna do a little practice now where we're going to learn about just a very simple breathing technique that can move us out of that red or yellow state into a state of calm alertness. And again, the brain is the remote control of the breath is the remote control of the brain, and a prolonged out breath will activate that rest and digest system and dampen down the activity of the nervous system. So let's do it together, right? I want you to find yourself in a comfy seat, just like we did at the beginning. And again, if you would like to take a break from the visual stimulation, you'll go ahead and close your eyes. And before we get started, just check in with how you're breathing right now. With no need to change it at all. Again, noticing how you're sitting. Maybe you wish to sit up a little straighter. And I'm going to provide a suggestion of a way that you can breathe. And if this feels uncomfortable or in any way like it incites, you know, fear or doesn't work, let it go. Okay? But for now, when you're ready, I'm going to get you to inhale for the count of 2, 3, 4. Exhale, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Inhale, 2, 3, 4. Exhale, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 2 more times. Breathing in, 2, 3, 4. Breathing out, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Breathing in, 2, 3, 4. Breathing out, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Normal breath in. Normal breath out. Good. And if you wish to share, I'm curious to know, even just that short exercise, what do you notice? What do you notice about what that does? Breathing more deeply, lightheaded. Okay, that makes sense as well, right? If it doesn't work, don't do it. Yeah, almost fell asleep is a message that I get every workshop I run. That means that you need to get some sleep. Good. Oh, thank you, everyone. Okay, beautiful. Calmness and peace. I love it. See, and that was less than a minute, right? So nice, easy, simple practices that we can include in our day. So I'm going to teach you another strategy from the type of therapy that I practice. So the type of therapy that's my home base is EMDR. So eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. So this is a type of therapy that recognizes that the current symptoms that we experience. So if I'm having a distressing thought or feeling in my body or a behavior that I'm doing, EMDR says that this is tied into memories that are stored in the body. Okay, so what does that mean? That means, let's say that I'm feeling really anxious about COVID-19, right? So EMDR would say that how do we store that in the body? So when you think about being anxious for COVID-19, where do you feel that? Okay, and I want you to slow down and think about, is there a time in your life where you would have felt the way that's making you feel? For example, if you're feeling out of control, right? We look back to the way that the brain stores memories and we say, is this about the current situation, or is this related back to a time in your life where you felt completely overwhelmed and this is triggering that? It could very well be the case that it is simply something in the present that is bothering us, but it rarely is. Like truly, when we're experiencing distress, it's often because of the events from our past that we haven't processed or dealt with. We can also be experiencing distress about events in the future, right? So future templates of things I'm worried about. And when we think about that as well, we also store that in the body. So when I think about something I'm nervous for, my heart might flutter or my jaw might get tight. And EMDR actually uses the body to be able to say, okay, let's be curious about what's happening in the body. What images come to mind and how you would prefer to feel. So it's body work based on, okay, if I'm feeling anxious for COVID-19, the events of COVID-19, I might say, okay, an adaptive belief might be, I can only control what I can. What would it feel like in your body to have that, right? To really feel like, okay, what's gonna happen is gonna happen. Okay, I might feel relaxed, right? So it's very body-based. And this type of therapy was completely new to me, and it completely changed my practice, right? It's a complete different way of conceptualizing problems. And what we do is that we first so EMDR is a phased type of therapy where before we go into what's really bothering you, right? If you have an event in your present or something triggering from the past or a worry for the future, we don't want to go to the most distressing thing in your life when we start therapy. First, what we do is we resource people to become aware of their bodies and to learn to shift between those affective states, right? We build people up to say, hey, you're actually capable of moving between different states. Did you know that, right? And we use the body to really install that information to say, okay, in our conversation, you were talking about being worried for your parent, right? And you cried really hard. Did you know that right now you actually are back online with me and you're calm and you're able to give yourself, compassion and care? Did you notice that shift? And people rarely do, right? We more often think about all the ways that we are, not doing things, that we are reacting to things in an unhelpful way, but we actually have so many skills and abilities that we don't even know that we have. And then once we resource people in their bodies to feel like I can deal with hard things, Then we bring up the most disturbing material, worries, fears, regrets, anxieties, and we process them. And how do we process things in EMDR therapy? We actually use bilateral stimulation. So bilateral stimulation is the use of alternating right and left stimulation. And there's many ways to do this. The classic way is eye movements. So literally eye movements. You get people to shift their eyes from one side to the next. That's one way. Another way is the butterfly hug and gentle tapping side to side. Another way is through those buzzers that you'll see on the picture right there that alternate buzzing one hand to the next. And there's some amazing research to show that just by using our bodies, we can find some pretty incredible results. Why is this? Why is it that shifting our eyes back and forth or using these buzzers, in our hands can actually help us process things? The first theory is rhythm. We know that in many cultures, we use drums and dance to be able to connect. There's also a theory that in utero, we hear the mother's heartbeat and we associate that linkage in our brains with comfort, right? With calm and safety. The second theory is that bilateral stimulation triggers our brain's capacity in the same way that REM sleep does. So did you know that when your eyes move back and forth, that in your sleep, you are actually integrating information from your day. You're moving between left and right hemisphere, and you're putting things that happened from your day into a file folder, and then you're putting it into the file folder into the cabinet and closing it and making sense of it, okay? Pretty neat stuff just about how simple movements can process things for us. So we can't talk our way out of everything. We can use our bodies to work through difficult material or to install how we want to feel. And I've added here, if you're interested to learn more about BLS, bilateral stimulation, I'm not going to go over that, but I added it in for you in the slides. So we are going to do a practice now, and we're going to engage in some slow bilateral stimulation to resource you during this difficult time. So I'm going to ask you all, I want you to think of, and this is in that first phase where we're resourcing you to deal with difficulties. So I want you to think of a quality that is going to help you make it through, you can decide the next week, the next month, right? Assuming that it might be a difficult one. And you can go ahead and type in the chat box, or you can write it down on your own if that would be helpful. And I can throw some out for inspiration. So things that might help us get through the next month: patience, gratitude, equanimity, calmness, kindness, sense of humor, focus, faith, sharing, self-compassion, optimism. Beautiful. So I want you to, in your mind, pick out one of those, qualities that you wish to harness for the month. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to engage in a bilateral stimulation exercise. So what I'll do is I'll guide you through a meditation. And then when I instruct you to, you're going to give yourself a butterfly hug. And it looks like this. You're going to cross your hands across your chest. And when I say to, you're going to tap one shoulder and then the next, nice and slow. You might want to rock gently as well, right? So when I say give yourself a butterfly hug, this is what I mean, okay? So when you're ready, I'll get you to please find a comfortable seat. And again, if it feels comfortable to you to close your eyes, please go ahead and do that. I like to have both my feet on the floor. My hands might be resting on my thighs. Sit up nice and straight. Maybe you want to lean back. And we always start by checking in with breath. So right away, simply notice how the body breathes itself all on its own. I want you here to try less hard. For people who in their spare time attend lectures and workshop, my sense is that maybe we can try, if you're like me, a little less hard right now. Body breathes all on its own. And again, you might say in as you inhale, and out as you exhale. And I'd like you here to let go of thinking brain. So make that conscious decision to say you're going to see what the mind brings up all on its own without you trying. And I'd like you to bring to mind the word that you'd like to access. The quality that will help you make it through the next little while. We'll set the intention that we'll explore this quality from a place of curiosity. All the while, the breath becomes even softer. Breathing in, breathing out. And I'd like you to bring up a time in the past that you have experienced this quality of energy for the word that you've chosen. It could be a time long ago. It could be recently. It could be a time that you demonstrated this quality and it was big and bold, or it can be a time you demonstrated even just a little bit of this quality. Soften your face, let your shoulders go. Steady the breath. And if you can't think of a time where you yourself have felt this way, can you imagine what it might feel like? What do you notice in your body? Maybe you have a friend or there's a character in a book or a movie that stands out. What would it feel like even to check in with that? What images come to mind? Can you connect to a felt sense of what it feels like in the body? Are there areas that feel lighter or more open? Can you sharpen your awareness on that? What is the quality of your breath? Soften the space between your eyebrows. Unhinge the jaw. So let the biting surfaces of the teeth separate. Let the jaw hang here, no gripping. Let the shoulders melt down. Every exhale. Let the belly soften here, so that with every inhale it expands. And every exhale it gently comes back towards the spine. And then from this place, once again, think of that quality that you'd like to harness. What do you notice? Any tingling or sensation in the body? Just stay open to that. And if and when you can feel that in your body, you'll keep your eyes closed, but you'll go ahead and give yourself that butterfly hug. Just notice, what does it feel like to have hands on your body? Again, we soften the brow and the jaw. We bring up that quality that you like to harness. And when you feel it, you'll slowly and really gently start to tap one shoulder, then the next. Steady your breath. Soften your brow. Maybe you wish to rock gently forward and back. Can you let yourself enjoy this? This gentle tap of one shoulder and then the next. Keep going. One shoulder and then the next, really slowly. Good. When you're done, that gentle tapping, you'll bring your hands down into your lap. And I want you to think of a time in the past where this quality of energy would have been useful to you. It could be time even today, where even a little bit of this quality would have been helpful. Or a time in the past where you really wish that you had access to what you have right now. And when you feel like you have that scenario, see if you can again conjure up the sensations in your body for the quality you wish to harness. And imagine yourself going back and using this skill. And when you have that image or sensation in your body, again, whatever pops up is okay. You'll cross your arms into that butterfly hug. And when you're ready, you'll gently begin to tap one shoulder and then the next, really nourishingly. Gentle rhythm, tap, tap. Steady your breath. Again, applying a resource that you might not have had. Okay, when you're ready, you'll bring your hands down. We'll take an inhale together and an exhale together. Good. And when you're ready, you'll blink your eyes open. Awesome. And I'll start to share. Oh, someone has written on the PowerPoint. I don't know how that happened. Resilience, is that what it says? Okay, wonderful. I'm gonna open up my chat here. Okay, so the last piece of our time together is acknowledging where the body holds stress, right? So we've really moved into the practice side, part of our time together. But before we do that, I'm actually going to check in and see how was that activity for everyone, right? Were you able to harness an activity in your body, a quality of energy in your body, and apply it to a previous situation or feel what that would feel like? I'm curious to hear people's feedback. Mm-hmm. Yeah, some people, you know, I just got a message that said lost focus, and you know what? That's the work, right? It's not going to work every time. And the amazing thing is that that's just data. If you found it hard to focus today, isn't that just information that it might be extra difficult right now? And there's no judgment. So I teach yoga, and I remember that in Shavasana, that final corpse pose, when there was a student who couldn't settle at the end of my class, I remember thinking, oh my gosh, did I do something wrong, or how can I help them? And over the years, I really started to say, like, you know what, that person just needs to fidget today. That person cannot settle today, and that's okay, right? What works for us today might not work tomorrow, and it's just trial and error. Yeah. Also, please keep in mind that this is an exercise that is difficult to do in a really big workshop, right? Sometimes it's really vulnerable to feel those things or to pay attention. So if you were able to touch that space, awesome. And if not, thank you for trying, and that's awesome too. Yeah, great. And then the last piece for you folks today is becoming aware of where the body holds stress. So I had a huge presentation for this, right? Like lots of slides. We're not going to get to it today. I'm so excited to share this information with you. I could run like 5 workshops, right? So for today, we're gonna have to do, settle for having learned what we were able to accomplish in our time. But I'm gonna ask you folks, do we have any requests for a last little bit of body work around places in the body that feel tight? Right, so if you want to let me know in your body, has there been anywhere that feels particularly shoulders, 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 shoulders? Okay, back. Okay. I feel like I should have done a poll for this. Neck, jaw, shoulders. Okay. Alrighty, so maybe what we'll do is we'll focus on, okay, eyes, ears, mouth, and toes. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna focus on jaw, neck, and shoulders, right? Especially since that's where you can see me. I think that would be best. Okay. So what I want everyone to do is, again, everything I'm offering to you is a suggestion. And please know that in February, I'm running just a purely yoga workshop for alumni. So if you're interested in just doing body work, none of the academic material, come to that, right? But for now, what I'll get you to do is please find yourself in a comfy seat. If you want to close your eyes, you're welcome to. I'm going to keep my gaze just at the tip of my nose and soften it there. And again, find your breath. And the minute you do that, you might notice that the body softens all on its own. And I'll encourage you here to become aware of your jaw. A really nice way that we can do that is by bringing our peace fingers to our TM joint. Okay, so that is the hinge in our jaw that connects our jaw. It's a hinge joint that connects our jaw to our skulls. And what I want you to do is give yourself a massage. So it's like in front of your ears. And let your jaw hang. So there's no need for it to clasp shut, which is what we do when we're anxious. Really just give yourself a nice massage and soften your brow as you do this. Find your breath. You might then take your peace fingers and walk them along the cheekbone where the jawline is. So right at the top of your gum line, rather, underneath your cheekbones. I just want you to experiment with touching that ridge. Soften your belly as you do this. We're just exploring your face, right? We never do this. And then walk your peace fingers down your jawline. And again, you might explore where the jaw and the gum line meet here. And then notice that the face accumulates tension. And then I want you to just take this as free play. So you'll move your fingers up and down your jawline. Pay attention to how your body wants to move, right? When we quiet down, our bodies tell us where we need some attention. So for me, it's that TM joint. When you're done with that, you'll let your hands come down to your lap. Sit up nice and tall, and all I'll get you to do is I want you to take your left ear to your left shoulder. So I'll mirror you. So left ear to left shoulder, and then let your left shoulder relax nice and down your back. And if you're getting a stretch in the right side of your neck, great, you'll breathe into that. If it's interesting to you, you might bring your right hand and you might just bring it out, forward and back a little. This is enough for me to actually just keep my hand in my thigh, on my thigh there. So breathing in again to that right side of the neck. Just a few nice steady breaths, no gripping in the tummy, let it hang. And when you're ready, you'll slowly let your chin draw down towards the earth. And you'll roll over to the opposite shoulder to ear. So this time, right ear to right shoulder. Soften both shoulders down the back and breathe into the left side of your neck. And the goal here is to soften and to feel a little bit of stretch. Even 10% is fine. Steady your breath just like that. Good. When you're ready, with your hands, you'll take your head really gently back to float on top of your spine. And then we'll do a little bit more work with the neck. First of all, notice how your chin is jutting forward. We spend all day like this. Bring your hand to your chin, maybe your index finger, and push it back. Not to like give yourself like a double chin, but enough just to, not have that jutting forward. And then keep your nose on the same plane, but turn it to the left. So just like that, and turn it so much so that this ropey muscle in your neck on the left side becomes, you can feel it coming out of your clavicle here. And what I want you to do is just give yourself a massage there. So this is your sternomastoid muscle. Just give yourself a massage there. Maybe you climb up that ropey muscle to your ear, or you go down lower. Let your belly be soft and just breathe here. And then let that go. Let your nose travel back to face towards the screen. And then keep your nose in the same plane. This time you'll go over to the right. And you'll massage the left side of your neck. Again, those ropey muscles that work so hard to keep your neck up all day. Self-massage, like compassionate touch, so important. What hurts? What needs attention? Good. When you're ready, you'll let that go. Bring your nose back to center. Bring your arms out in front of you, right? And then you'll bring your right arm over top of your left, and you'll just give yourself a hug here. That's it. And you'll reach your elbows up. You could be like barely holding yourself wherever you are, that's where you are. Your right arm is on top of your left. If you wish to bring the backs of your hand in towards one another and reach your elbows up, cool. If you want to find eagle arms, cool. But holding yourself like this is enough as well. And just find your breath, reaching your elbows up to the sky, feeling the stretch in the back. No grunting, please. So if you're grunting like me, you've gone too far. A few more breaths just like that. When you're ready, you'll let that go. And this time you'll bring your arms out in front. You'll bring your left arm on top this time in a cross. And then you'll give yourself a hug on the opposite side. And if that's really easy and you wish to bring the backs of your hands together, reach your elbows up, do that. Or if you want to find eagle arms, find your hands in prayer. This is quite advanced, so don't feel like you have to. Even if you're barely hugging yourself, that's where you are. Breathe and enjoy the stretch in your shoulders. A few more breaths just like that. And when you're ready, you'll let that go and then roll your shoulders out here. So roll them forward, up, around, down, forward, up, back, down. A few more times just like that. If there's any movement that's calling to you, please find it now. Like I love to stretch my arms up, right? We don't do this all day. We spend our time like this, right? What would it feel like to lift your arms up? Sway side to side like a tree blowing in the wind. Any movement that feels good for you. Okay, so I am mindful of the time. It is 8 p.m. and I could go much longer, but I will stop now.